There are two ways of communicating. One is conversation, which we all know, and the other is listening. The rules of conversation say don't interrupt, but the rules of listening are completely different. As long as you're using a you statement and you're reflecting emotions, you want to interrupt as much as you can, and the speaker will feel deeply heard and validated. This is counterintuitive to everything we think we know about listening. And that's why you have to be taught how to do this, because you would never figure it out on your own. I mean, I stumbled on it by accident. I had a brilliant flash of insight in a very difficult mediation back in 2005. So one of the challenges in learning how to affect label is overcoming the fear that you're being rude or condescending or patronizing or manipulative by telling somebody what they're feeling. And I find that in teaching this, that's the biggest hurdle that people have to overcome, is just having the courage to say you feel or you are.
That is the hardest part about this work.
That's the hardest part.
The hardest.
And the way you get around it is by practice. And I'll talk for a moment about how you practice this.
And you can use love. You think, I really love this person. I really love my partner. I really love my child. I really love my parent and my friend. And if I really love them, I can do the most loving thing for them by validating their emotions. And there was something that was really interesting that happened, because Doug and I actually haven't done this process in the last 3 or 4 days of him just validating my emotions like that. And when somebody's stressed, when they're upset, they don't have access to, and I might be saying this inaccurately, so Doug, correct me, they don't have access to their prefrontal cortex.
Right.
I don't know how I'm feeling. I know I'm off, but I don't really know how I'm feeling. So by him defining my emotions and telling me the emotions, I go inside and go, is that true or not true? And then I find a deeper truth of, oh yeah, that's true. Or I go deeper and I find something different. And then he actually helped me find something that I hadn't even considered.
Okay, so a lot of people, there have been a lot of interesting questions popping up. So let's answer some of those questions, and then we'll keep developing this a little further. So let me scroll back up here.
And there's another thing that happens when he positively affect labeled me. He didn't have to be right. I could correct him and say, no, I'm actually frustrated, or no, I'm not really feeling unloved. But then when he did do it and finally got to the, yeah, it's about the control, I literally felt my prefrontal cortex come back online. There was a shift in my brain and my brain chemistry. And now there's like tingling on the forehead.
Right. So let me stop right there and say there are brain scanning studies that show why this technique works. We can actually see what's going on in the human brain. And the seminal study was published in 2007. And there have been 9 studies that have followed it so far. I haven't checked the last year or two to see if there are other ones, but they're all coming out of Matthew Lieberman's lab at UCLA. And basically what the studies show is that when you label emotions, you inhibit the emotional centers of the brain, the emotional circuits, primarily the amygdala and related emotional circuits in the brain. And at the same time, you activate a part of the brain called the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, which is the executive function of the brain. Now, there are reasons why this all works, which I'm not going to bother you going into the great detail of it tonight. But the essence is that you're lending your prefrontal cortex to your partner who is upset for the 90 seconds it takes for the emotions to go down and for the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, the executive function of the brain, to turn back on again. And every human, you cannot stop this from happening. If somebody's affect labeling you, you're going to calm down. You have no choice, because our brains are hardwired for this. That's why this works on every human brain on the planet. It doesn't matter your culture, your language, your ethnicity, none of that matters.
But sometimes people can get more emotionally upset while they're getting affect labeled, because they're feeling safe to actually start processing their emotions, because somebody's actually listening and validating their emotional experience.
So that's right. 2 things can happen. The 2 things can happen that are not common, but they do happen. One is that I start affect labeling Alea, and she gets even more excited. So maybe she's really angry. So I could say something like, I could say, "Oh, Alea, you're really frustrated." No, I say, "Alea, oh, man, Alea, you're really pissed off. You're really angry." And she says, "No, I'm not pissed off. I'm frustrated." Now she's echoed up, right? She ratcheted up, and I'll come in right underneath her, and I'll say, "Oh, yeah, you're really frustrated. Yeah, you don't feel heard. You don't feel supported." And I'll go on through all the list, and then I'll say, "And you're really angry." And she'll say, "Yeah, I'm really angry."
Right.
So you're never wrong when you affect label. That's the first thing to understand. If somebody says no, it's they just can't access their emotional database, so they don't know what they're feeling, and they're going to say no. You just stick with it. Maybe they'll correct you, maybe they won't, and you just keep going, and eventually they'll calm down enough to be able to recognize their feeling, and they'll say yes.
And if they start to go into story and they start cycling on the story, interrupt them with and that's upsetting to you, or that was really frustrating for you, and you felt disrespected and you don't feel heard. Because people can sometimes run on a story as a way of deflecting, right?
Well, that's called blocking, but that's a more advanced
Something
topic that we
different.
probably should take up right now.
Okay.
I know we want to give out so much information, but I'm trying to keep this really basic and simple. So the other thing that can happen is you can get pushback. Who do you think you are, my psychotherapist? Don't do that stuff on me, right? You'll get that. When that happens, which doesn't happen very often, pat yourself on the back because you did a great job. The problem is you were too good. We all surround ourselves with these big walls to protect our emotions and our emotional vulnerability. This starts at about 6 to 8 years old, when we start learning that we live in an emotionally unsafe world, and we start building up walls around us. And when you affect label somebody, especially if you're a little clumsy, you're going to be like a superhero, powering through all those walls, seeing that person for who they really are, and it's going to scare the crap out of them. And that's when you're going to get the pushback. And the solution there is to stop and say, "I'm sorry," back off, give it 15 minutes, and then come back and affect label again. But this time, do it conversationally with just one emotion, like, "Oh, really frustrated."
More
Don't,
casual.
don't make it more casual, make it more subtle, more nuanced, and just one emotion.
And you could even play with like, "Oh, so frustrating," as opposed to,
Again, that's more advanced than we need to get into tonight. We're just trying to cover the basics here. There are a lot of subtle, nuanced techniques that we teach that unfortunately we don't have the time to get into it, but I just want to kind of give you the overview. All right, so you don't ask questions. You would never say something like, "Are you angry?" "Oh, you're angry? Are you angry?" No, never ask a question. Never use an I statement when you're affect labeling.
"I
When you're
think
affect
you
labeling a
are."
third person,
Right.
you use now we're talking about third person affect labeling. You can also affect label yourself. And that's when you do use an I statement. You would say to yourself, "I'm really angry. I'm frustrated. I don't feel heard. I feel ignored, unappreciated." And then you can affect label. And it's the same thing. When you affect label yourself, you'll actually start calming yourself down. So you don't need the trust of the other person in order to be effective at this. There's no trust involved here at all. This is all a biophysiological reaction of the brain listening to this kind of information. It's hard neuroscience, and it works like crazy. I have taught this in maximum security prisons to people serving life sentences without possibility of parole, all the way up to the Congressional Budget Office, where I've taught senior analysts how to de-escalate members of Congress and staff. It works everywhere without fail. Okay, a couple of other questions. Shouldn't you ask her, "Do you feel blank?" No, I think we've answered that question. What would happen if Alea blamed you for something? Like, I'm stressed and it's your fault. All right, how do you not get triggered and keep calm? That's why you ignore the words.
And Buddha bubble.
Well, I'll get there in a second.
Yeah.
I haven't forgotten. You ignore the words. So let's do a quick role play here, Alea. So let's do this again. This time you start blaming me and I'll affect label you. So I'm all stressed out and it's your fault and you're not doing whatever. Say whatever you want.
All right.
Okay.
I'm going to make something up that's not real.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Doug, when you don't take out the trash and do the dishes, then I don't have enough time to tend to Emmy and fill the hummingbird feeders. And it just feels like you don't respect my time.
So you don't feel respected. You don't feel appreciated. You don't feel supported.
I feel like you're not my priority. Like I'm not a priority for you. You just
You
take
don't,
me for granted.
you feel like you're unappreciated. You're being taken for granted,
Yeah.
that you're not a priority. So you feel unloved and abandoned.
And that your time's more important.
And you feel like my time is the perception you have is that you're not important and your time is not important.
Yeah.
And it makes you sad
Yeah.
and upset
Yeah.
and distressed.
Yeah.
And you feel abandoned and all alone
Yeah.
and unloved.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that hurts.
It's scary.
It's scary.
Sad.
It's bad.
Yeah. Unloved.
Unloved. Okay, so you see how she blames me, but I ignore it. I just ignore it. All I do is reflect what she's experiencing. 99% of the time, somebody's blaming you for something you didn't do. And your immediate knee-jerk reaction is to fight back. I'm going to fight to be right.
And even if you did do something, it's never about it. It's they want to get something inside themselves. They're just using you to try to get a need, which we'll talk about in the second
Yeah, they need
webinar.
they need to be validated. And that's why when somebody gets upset at you and they're yelling at you, you never apologize, you never rationalize, you
Never
never
ask
justify,
or forgiveness. Never
you
ask
never
for
ask
forgiveness.
forgiveness, you never try to explain yourself, you never try to argue your point. Never do that stuff.
Never defend.
Never defend. Ever.
And you might
Stop
have
it.
and you might have to have literally this inner mantra of, I can't defend it, not defending, I'm not defending, listen to the emotions, read the data field.
Yeah.
Just this constant inner mantra to get you in this new groove. And so by writing these steps down and doing this inner mantra the next time you're in a moment with somebody.
And remember that when you start affect labeling, many times the feelings are going to escalate and escalate and escalate. They're going to get stronger. You stick with it. Don't give up. Keep affect labeling. And so right now, I want to give you a quick tool. So if you're at a place where you can get out a pad of paper and a pencil, I want to give you a secret. This is the deep secret that Doug has developed. And it's called emotional layering. And what I've learned is that it's very difficult for people in the beginning to be able to grab onto the emotions and then reflect them back because it's unstructured data. And our brains don't do well with unstructured data. And emotions are unstructured. We've never been trained how to structure the data. So now I'm going to give you the structure. So on the left-hand side of the paper, I want you to write down these 6 emotions on the left side. Anger, disrespect, they're just down, just on a column. Anger, disrespect, fear, shame, sadness, and abandonment. And then go back to the top of the column. The first word is anger. To the right of anger, write these words out. Frustration, annoyance, irritation, rage. So you can see anger comes in all kinds of different flavors. Then the next line is disrespect. So you're going to write not being heard or unheard or not being listened to, ignored, being treated unfairly, not being supported, not being appreciated. Next line down are the fear emotions. So you got fear, and then anxious or anxiety, worried, or concerned, terrified, scared. The next line down is shame. So it would be shame, humiliation, embarrassment, and guilt. The next line down is sadness. So it would be sadness, grief, depressed, upset, distressed, unhappy. And the last layer which is where the gold is abandonment, rejected, unloved, betrayed, and unlovable. Now, the way you're going to use this, these are 6 layers of emotions. The way you're going to use this is to start with what is most obvious to you. What's the emotion that's most obvious? If it's almost always with an angry person, it's going to be anger. So you'd start off and you'd say, you're really angry, and you just watch the reaction. And you'd say, you're really angry and you're really pissed off. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out, okay, so now they're angry. Typically, the easiest way is just to go down through the layers. So just listen to me as I show you how to use it. So you're really angry and you're really pissed off. You feel completely disrespected. Nobody's listening to you. You feel ignored. You feel unappreciated and unsupported, and it's just really unfair. Next layer. And you're really anxious and concerned and worried and even a little scared. Next layer. And you feel a little embarrassed and humiliated. Next layer. And it makes you sad and distressed and upset and unhappy. And the last layer, and you feel completely abandoned, unloved, and rejected. And you feel like you're completely unlovable and worthless. And the whole thing just really makes you angry. You see how simple that is? And that's all you have to do. That's all the vocabulary that you need to make this work.